Presentations for January 22nd, 2018. Will you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda is an appointment to the Historic District Commission, Rosina Negron. Is Rosina present? Please come forward. Yeah.
I'm going to cheat off.
Welcome. Just very briefly introduce yourself and explain why you want to be on the commission.
My name is Rosina Negron. I've been an alternate in the commission. My name is Rosina Negron. I've been an alternate in the commission since last year. I have a master's degree in science in historic preservation and an undergrad in architecture. I've been working for the last 12, 13 years in both architecture and preservation in Miami, Atlanta, D.C., and recently here in Southport, Connecticut. I have an interest in preservation based on my background. I live in the historic district of Old Post Road in one of the surviving houses from the fire. So that's about it.
Sounds like you're qualified. Does anyone have any questions from the body? Seeing none, thank you, and you don't have to appear on Monday.
Thank you.
Next, we have George Clark for appointment as an alternate to the HDC. Good evening.
I'm George Clark. I've lived in Fairfield on and off since 1960. I've spent the last 20 years buying, restoring, and fixing houses in Fairfield, many of them in the historic district. Currently own 3 or 4 historic houses, and have really enjoyed, I love preservation. I like fixing things that are broken. I was an executive with Canon Corporation for 40 years, so I've had a business career and a love of architecture, design, and historic natures.
Thank you. Also well qualified. Are there any questions from the body for this candidate? Representative Vergara.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Jill Vergara, District 7. I think that your address puts you in the Southport Historic District.
Yes, ma'am.
Great, because I think it's so wonderful to have someone represented in each of the 3 historic districts on that commission. So that's wonderful that you are. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are there any further questions from the body? Representative Iacono?
Thank you, Pam Iacono, District 8. Mr. Clark, I just wanted to thank you for waiting patiently for an opening to appear on the Historic District Commission. I think you're going to be a wonderful asset. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Mr. Moderator. Sam Cargill,
Representative
District
Cargill.
10. Additionally, I'd like to say that Mr. Clark is really somebody who's really special in this town, the things and the projects that he's been involved with. He's been a neighbor for many years, and he's been in front of Historic many times. And I know he'll stick up for the integrity of the historic nature of this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Any further comment from the body? Seeing none, thank you, and you don't have to appear on Monday.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Next, Ted Schwartzman for appointment to the Harbor Management Commission.
Same
Evening.
thing?
Yeah, same thing.
Okay. My name is Ted Schwartzman. I've been a resident of Fairfield for about 25 years, and I've sailed out of Southport Harbor for probably 12 to 15 years with Community Sailing of Fairfield. I've also been on the board of Community Sailing. So I think from that experience, I have a good appreciation for Southport Harbor and an understanding of the harbor and Long Island Sound. And I would hope that that means that I could contribute something to the Harbor Management Commission and help them with their mission of protecting that valuable asset for the town.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the body? Representative Georgiadis?
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. We've known each other for 25, 26 years, living in the same neighborhood, same community, and I thank you very much for volunteering your time and stepping up. You think you'll be a big asset, so thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Any further comment from the body? Representative Pastilli?
Sharon Pastilli, District 3. Ted and I actually worked together for a few years, about 15, 20 years ago, and over the course of our conversations, he's always indicated a great love for the town, so I just wanted to say thank you for volunteering your time.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the body? Seeing none, thank you. You do not have to appear on Monday.
Thank you.
Next is Jacob Hirschler as an alternate to the Harbor Management Commission.
Hello, I'm Jacob
Hi.
Hirschler. I've lived in the Southport area since 2000. I've had a town mooring in Southport Harbor for a number of years, and I am an avid sailor and obviously very interested in the care of our harbor.
Any members of the body have questions for this appointment? Seeing none, thank you, and you do not have to appear on Monday. Moving on to the H. Smith Richardson Clubhouse Building Committee update.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Great to see a lot of familiar faces and some new faces. I'm Anthony Calabrese, Director of Parks and Recreation, and I'm going to turn it over to the Golf Commission Chairman, Ryan Scully, who's going to walk you through our presentation on the H. Smith Richardson Clubhouse and the need for that clubhouse and why we want to do a renovation to it. So I'm going to turn it over.
Good evening, everyone, and really big turnout for the committee meeting. But as Anthony said, my name is Ryan Scully. I am the current chair of the Town of Fairfield Golf Commission. I'm just a lawyer, so don't ask me any of the construction questions when we go through the presentation, but hopefully somebody else can answer those. I was asked by the Board of Selectmen to perform this presentation or a similar one to the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen, as well as this body here, to underscore the importance of the clubhouse and the status of it up at H. Smith Richardson. So I believe everyone had a copy of it sent to them a few weeks ago, so hopefully everybody had a chance to go through it. So We won't have to go. I won't have to go through it in painstaking detail, but I will go over some of the highlights as we move forward. So, just the history and the timeline of the golf course is the clubhouse was opened in 1972, and it had absolutely no renovation since 1972. So that's just a first starting point. There was a clubhouse renovation and feasibility study conducted in 2008 when the clubhouse was kind of at the forefront, and they were hoping that it would get moving at that point, but unfortunately it's been 10 years and nothing has happened on it. In 2014, Mr. Tetro asked the Town Facilities Commission to perform a recommendation, and they did that in 2014, and as you'll see when we get into the body of it, they came up with some pretty kind of harsh criticisms of the clubhouse, and that was 4 years ago in 2014. So in 2017, the Board of Selectmen is hopefully going to approve the members of the H. Smith Clubhouse Building Committee, subject to your approval, and it will get seated. And then we'll request that the Board of Finance appropriate the initial $250,000 funds to get the project kicked off. So that's kind of where we are right now. The current clubhouse design is, I'm not sure how many of you, I don't recognize a lot of people from the golf course, so I'm not sure how many of you play, but it's a simple concrete block construction, single story, 7,400 square feet. It includes a pro shop, a men's and ladies locker room, 2 offices, storage room, a restaurant, bar, and kitchen where we have a concessionaire, and a covered terrace. There's a standalone boiler building that sits outside the building that provides all the heat, and then there's a septic system since there's no sewer up in that area of town. So as I said before, since 1972, there hasn't been any substantial renovations made to the facility, and like I talked about, in 2014, the Facilities Commission concluded that the clubhouse and grounds are in desperate need of repair. That report is in this packet in the appendices, so you can all feel free to take a look at it. But some of the highlights are the major mechanicals are insufficient and failing, the HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and septic. They're single-pane windows, so it's not energy efficient. The roof is beyond its useful life and failing. The building's not properly insulated and extremely expensive to heat during the winter. I think we use over 4,100 gallons of heating oil to heat it each year, so that's a pretty substantial amount. The kitchen is undersized for the vendor and the needs, and the septic is failing. And I don't know how many, like I said, I don't know how many of you have been in it, but when you go into the bathrooms, you will notice the septic failing as soon as you go in, especially in the summertime, but probably right now too, but definitely when it's hot in the summer. So I would invite anyone on this board, if you ever want a tour, please contact me or Anthony, and we'll be happy to bring you around to demonstrate how important it is that this project move forward. The floor plan is not configured correctly for what they need, and the cart barn is undersized, improperly configured. It has a single entry, which means you have to pull in and back out, can't pull through. And the roof is, Anthony was just telling me before we got up here, it's really leaking bad, and we just got a brand new set of carts, and now they're in a leaky cart barn. You know, they've tarped it and done the best things they can, but it's obviously a big concern for us moving forward. So the director from the Board of Selectmen has sort of changed. When they first announced the resolution in October of 2017, it sort of changed since then. So on December 6th, they decided to really just focus it on the clubhouse, and that's the direction that the Board of Selectmen wants to follow. There's been a lot of talk about adding other amenities up there, but according to the December 6, 2017, you can see that the Board of Selectmen is really focusing on the clubhouse, which is kind of the major need, obviously, that we need due to the economic climate, the budget concerns, and things like that. So once it's formed, we'll ask the building committee, who many of them are here today, to assess the needs and the options and prioritize the objectives, evaluate the alternatives, and prepare a cost-benefit comparison for the Board of Finance and the other bodies to take a look at, provide the recommendations to the town bodies for consideration approvals, and oversee the implementation of the final plan. The primary objective should be to identify a fiscally prudent plan for the HSR clubhouse and the grounds. The primary priority is the golf operations. Considering the non-golf season amenities, like I just mentioned, has kind of fallen to a secondary priority. I think what they're trying to consider is a staged approach where they do the clubhouse and they leave room for the other amenities so they can be added as we move forward, you know, different money comes available or changes and needs for the town change. Consider how it fits in with 2 assets that did not exist when they did the building committee feasibility study in 2008, and that's like Penfield Pavilion. there was talk of having a very large banquet hall associated with the clubhouse, but now that Penfield Pavilion exists, that may not be something that's necessary, so that's something that we would want the building committee to take a hard look at as they move forward. There's some preliminary estimations of construction costs in here that Don DiMartino, who's one of the potential building committees, helped us put together. He has a lot of experience in construction, and he's here today, so he could explain the numbers a lot better than me. But the important thing to point out is in the 2008 projected costs are a lot different than the 2018 projected costs, since obviously 10 years is a long time and money's not the same value, and costs have gone up, and it's been 10 years. So it's important to keep these numbers in mind with the three different options that they laid out based on the feasibility study. Obviously, these numbers can change as we move forward depending on how they configure it, but it's just something to keep a close eye on. On the next page is the appropriation of the funds and the design fee estimate. That's the first step in the process that we'll be asking the building committee, we'll be asking the Board of Finance to do first, and that's appropriate the $250,000. And you can see on page 9 of the presentation is this is how it'll be used: to engage the owner's representative, the architect, and the engineer, develop a recommended plan. As I said before, since the construction costs have risen, the initial appropriation risen commensurate with that to $250,000, which is roughly about 4 to 5% of what we predict that the construction costs would be, which is industry standard if you're familiar with those kind of things. So, all right, well, some of the questions for the HSR Building Committee to address, we talked about some of them already, but the first and foremost is a renovation a viable option, or do we just need to start from scratch and replace it completely? If replaced, what's the appropriate square footage? Should there be a banquet facility? Does there need to be room for tournaments? Should it be just for golf activities? The configuration, where should the kitchen be located? Where should the pro shop be located? Maybe we could shrink the building footprint, but make it 2 stories to save on energy efficiency. These are all questions that they'll be addressing. And the location, should the footprint of the building be moved to either add more parking and maybe take advantage of some of our great views over 18, because right now the clubhouse is set away from the 18th. And I think if it was up against it, then there may be some views and things that we can take advantage of and make it a much more attractive place to be. Obviously, taking a look at the green initiatives, it's got to be the least efficient building in town. If it's not, I'd put it up against any other one. So I think that's obviously something that we can really improve on as we move forward. And then, again, as I talked about, to discuss some of the non-golf activities, some of the winter activities, and how that can fit in either now or in the future as we move forward. So they're obviously going to look at the cost of the various options, the renovations versus the tear down, and how those options are going to impact the P&L of the golf course. Luckily, the golf course is very healthy financially, and we do pretty well there. But I think they can take a hard look at how the short-term construction and the long-term construction is going to impact that. Because if we don't have a clubhouse for a year, for example, they need to take a look at how that would, affect the golf play while we're up there. And what is the long-term return on the investment of the clubhouse and the operations? And obviously, they need to look at the timing. How long is it going to take? When's the target date? And things like that. So, some of the potential impact, the benefits, are really can't even be listed in one page. But the improvement to the town, obviously, for the Fairfield residents, is going to be a key. I think people don't understand, and I'm not sure if you guys know this or not, but I would consider it the best public golf course in Fairfield County. It's won a number of awards to that effect. So the clubhouse does not match the course. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do for the town and for residents, is to have the clubhouse match what kind of great course that we have. Obviously, we think it would increase both resident and non-resident play. The opportunity for green and solar installation, it could be a great solar opportunity. To update it to the current ADA and the modern building standard codes, because it's definitely not ADA compliant currently, and I'm sure it's not up to the building standard codes, so that will be able to do it. I think there's a lot of potential revenue increases. In addition to more resident rounds and non-resident rounds, I think we'll have an opportunity to get more golf tournaments and outings, which we currently don't get very many at all. I would think that's probably linked to the clubhouse, but I think those would increase after we get it. An increased competitive bidding for the concessionaire and the rent. I think we'd get a substantial increase in rent from a concessionaire based on a new building, new kitchen, new facility to currently what we get now. And then obviously the possibility for future revenue for off-season if we did decide to add some winter-type things moving forward. I talked about some of the cost savings, but the maintenance fees up there are crazy. I mean, they actually lost heat the weekend of the 7th and the 8th completely, and the pipes burst. So there was a significant amount of overtime spent by the town facilities folks to get it up and running for the concessionaire. And I think I think they told me that they've lost heat at least 3 or 4 times over the past 3 months. So every time something like that happens, it's just overtime for the facilities folks to get up there and fix it. Higher energy efficiency is a no-brainer. It's like I said, it would be increased immensely. It'll be a lot less expensive to operate, and obviously the opportunity to consider private investment for concessionaire renovations, I think, is something that the building committee can look at as well. That's other clubhouse facilities in Fairfield County have done that, where they've partnered with a concessionaire, and they've performed, put in money for some of the renovations in exchange for a lease, a more desirable lease. So I think that's something that the building committee can look at as well. So the next steps, just kind of in conclusion, is after this board hopefully approves and appoints the committee, they'll ask the Board of Finance to appropriate the $250,000, which I guess then would come back in front of you folks, I believe is how it works, to be approved. So hopefully that will occur. And then after that, the building committee can get to work. They can start doing all the things that we talked about and hopefully provide some really good recommendations to the town bodies, and then get the final plan moving. And it's been a 10-year project, so hopefully we can kick it off the ground. I mean, I think I just moved to Connecticut when they started the process, so it's been a while. But, and again, like I said, feel free to take a look at the pictures and the appendices. I don't even think the pictures really do it justice. I think if you go up there, you can really see the need for some type of renovation or replacement at the clubhouse. So, I'm open to any questions or comments.
Thank you. Do any members of the body have questions on this item? Representative Iacono.
Hi, Pam Iacono, District 8. Thank you for being here. Thank you for putting together this presentation. We tried to get this off the ground last term, and we weren't all that familiar with what was going on. So getting this information was incredibly helpful. I completely support the fact that the clubhouse needs to be renovated and updated. I know that there are major maintenance issues that need to be addressed. I'm extremely concerned with the number of times the committee will decide, the committee will decide, the committee will decide. I don't understand why a committee of appointed volunteers are making these decisions when we have a Parks and Rec Commission who is appointed and a Golf Commission that is appointed. Can you explain to me why those two commissions haven't written up full plans of what they're looking for, and why this building committee, why their charge is just not to execute that plan? For example, I was alarmed to hear that the building committee will decide the size of the banquet hall. You're throwing out words that alarm me in the sense of all I'm hearing is scope creep.
I'll let Anthony answer some of those questions, but I did want to just add to your point about the presentation. I appreciate your compliment, and Craig Curley, who's not here today, was really instrumental in putting this together, as well as Don DiMartino here. So I wanted to make sure they get their due before we go on and answer your question.
So essentially what happened was, in the appendices, there should be I don't want to call it like an ed spec, but if you take the ed projects, all the school buildings that we've done in town here, there's always ed specs that say, we need 4 classrooms of this and 4 classrooms of that. So what the Board of Selectmen asked the Golf Commission and the Parks and Rec Commission to do was to come up with a general building description. So kind of like ed specs. So you'll see that in the appendices where it says that we'd like to have an office, and they'd like to have a pro shop, and they'd like to have a banquet hall.
Mercedes-Benz.
But there's some other amenities on there, as the ice rink and paddle tennis and things like that. So there started to be some more concern that we weren't looking at this project as just the clubhouse. Parks and Rec Commission and Parks and Rec Department, we would love to see this facility used all year-round, 4 seasons. Right now, currently, golf season will run, if we're really good and we get some good weather, we could open up in March, late March. We can run through December, depending on the snow. But it's the winter months where the concession's still open, and there's other things that could be going on up there. But The building committee, I don't want to say the building committee, but the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance were concerned with that list that we had put together, saying, we don't want you to look at all these other things. So the building committee, what they're going to be tasked with, as all building committees are, is deciding, basically pricing all that out, and then can go through and say, okay, well, for $6 million, you can get everything on the list, but if you wanted to do just the clubhouse, it's going to be 4.5. And then we can plug and go as need be down the road and plan the footprint of that building, make it a little smaller so we know we can address the parking issue, we can address the cart barns. But yeah, majority of this is going to be decided by the building committee, and it'll really be driven by the price.
And I think, to that point, I mean, I think we're sort of at the mercy of that. That's just how buildings are built in town. I mean, there's a building committee, and there's a process that needs to be completed, and
Very familiar with
and
all
that
that.
this is
Thank
the
you.
process. So, I mean, listen, I'm obviously the chair of the golf commission. The clubhouse is my #1 priority. If you want me to design it, I'd be happy to do it, but that's not, I mean, I think this is the process that we're faced with, and I think those are things that building committees traditionally decide in town, and they will, well, I shouldn't say decide, but they will look at, price out, and determine which recommendations they should make.
And I believe you know as well as I do that the building committee will report directly to the selectmen, so.
That's what I wanted to hear, thank you. So there'll be possibly there could be schematic designs drawn upon and presented to the Board of Selectmen with different levels of appropriation, I think is what you're telling me.
Correct.
I think that's the plan currently.
All right, thank you. Well, I want to thank Mr. DiMartino. He's a great guy and a great expert for putting this together.
He was instrumental in putting this together.
Thank you.
Representative Gale.
Hi, Hannah Gale, District 6. So I'm interested in seeing an option for minimal appropriations, and I think the voters would be too. I really want to see really low-tier options. And I'm also curious as to, is there any youth programming possible at this facility, given your current dreams?
There are currently a number of youth golf programs that run at the golf course.
There are.
I don't know if there would be increase of that. I mean, they do a pretty good job now, so I would assume that would continue, and hopefully it would be more attractive.
Thank you.
Representative Lefkowitz.
Hi, Nancy Lefkowitz, District 1. Do you have the numbers of how many people use the facilities both in town and out of town? How many rounds, or I don't know what the metric is, but
We do about 40,000 rounds a year. What is it, Anthony? I'm not sure exactly what the breakdown is. Not off the top of my head, but I know it's 40,000 rounds total for both resident and non-resident rounds.
and is that pretty similar to area like Westport at Longshore, for instance? Any sense?
It's more than it's one of the higher rounds that in the area. It's definitely more than Westport at Longshore. But if you wanted some specific questions, you can
Curious.
feel free to email us. I have all the numbers. I just don't have them handy with me today.
And then any discussions so far in some of your dreaming of combining maybe like the Parks and Rec Department up there at and going bigger, or have you not?
No, that's never been a consideration.
Move Anthony out of his cushy office? I don't know.
Representative Durrell.
Happy family.
I'm sorry, Alex Terrell, RTM3. I'm sorry for my tardiness. I may have missed out on something. I was invited by the Jennings School Cub Pack 88 to talk about the work of the RTM, so apologize for that. Regarding the golf course, yes, I actually had dinner last week with Mark Cannizzaro, who's an esteemed writer for the New York Post and covers the PGA, and he has very high lauds to say about it. The practice range, will anything be done with the practice range? Because, as you know, the location where it is really has nothing to do with the clubhouse. And it's almost, you can't really do one without the other, one with the other.
The clubhouse project is completely separate. There were no plans to do anything with the driving range or moving it closer or anything like that.
Excuse me. Sorry. Would anything be thought about in that regard? Because it does seem like the driving ranges in the area, like the one in Shelton, they do seem to have good business if they have, you know, food there and so forth. I mean, it's a revenue stream, perhaps, as opposed to where it is, which is an outlier.
It's definitely something the building committee could look at.
Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. My question is, the revenue from the concession, do you know approximately what you get for the golf season?
$36,000 a year.
Okay.
And it's a 12-month
Increases.
It's a 12-month lease, it's not just for the golf season.
Okay, if you relocated the clubhouse to the 18th, top of the 18th, like you were speaking, would you be able to maintain that revenue year to year instead of tearing it down and losing revenue? You said it's a 10-year project. How many years would you lose if
No,
you?
so it's definitely, if he didn't mean to say it was a 10-year project, all he meant to say was this project they'd begun the talks 10 years ago.
Okay.
And now it's finally, hopefully, coming to fruition where there will be a project. And this project should be just as long as any other project in town. I mean, a year, 2 years, I would think. But I'm not a construction expert, so I'm just throwing out a timeline that I would think would be comfortable. So no, we haven't talked about how long we would be down. If they leveled the building, we would have to put up some kind of temporary structure for the starter shack and the pro shop. But I think the concession would be out of commission until the new building is up. Depending on what the new building looks like and how big that kitchen is where Ryan was talking about the demand for how high that lease could be. Greenwich right now, their concessionaire is paying $120 a year. So if you have a banquet hall and a large kitchen, the demand for that money is there. So,
But without the banquet hall?
Well, the banquet hall, no, that would decrease it. I mean, the banquet hall is going to be a more enticing, thing for a concessionaire. But I'm pretty confident we'd get more than 36,000 with the new facility, no matter what. But like Stamford, they pay 35,000, I think. But they also gave like 1.2 million to renovate the clubhouse. So there's different ways you can structure it.
But back to my question, how many, would you lose one season or two?
I don't know. That's something that the building committee would have to look at. I hope it wouldn't be more than one, but I don't, like I said, I'm not a construction person, so I don't know how long it would take. I hope it wouldn't be more than one, but
No, yeah.
I don't know.
Thank you.
Representative Pistilli?
Sharon Pistilli, District 3. Will the committee also be charged with outlining the return on investment? So as you go through the cost-benefit analysis of each of the items, will you also be, projecting, the revenues from all those different scenarios? Is that solely with the committee, or where does that responsibility lie?
The committee will work with the Golf Commission and the Parks and Rec Department on putting that paper together.
Representative Herron?
Hi, Doreen Herron, District 9. You referred to youth programs at the golf course, and I was under the impression that more of the youth programs were at the Par 3. Can you just give me an example of some of the youth programs that are at Smith Richardson?
Yeah, I guess it is mostly at the driving range, as well as at the driving range up at H. Smith, as well as the Par 3 is where the focus is, because you really have to be a certain kind of age and skill level to play like the full 18 at H. Smith. But I know they run, I don't know them offhand, but I do know they run a couple of camps during the year. But it's all done through the pro, not through the town.
First tee?
They do not have the first tee program.
No, that's it. The wheel.
Yeah, Representative Iacona?
I just want to follow up on
Yeah, that's true too. And, sorry, interruption. And all the high schools obviously play their golf there as well. And
I just wanted to follow up on Representative Herron's statement about the youth golf, and I just wanted to point out that there was a commissioner who asked to make significant changes to the youth program up there, and the Golf Commission shot it all down. So I think we should be very clear about what's allowed up at Smith and what's allowed down at the Par 3.
Okay, I'm not sure what you mean by substantial changes, other than lowering
There was a whole proposal to change things to allow more youth golfers, and that was shut down by your commission very recently.
There was a proposal to allow the age of someone to play at H. Smith Richardson to be dropped. However, I want to make it very clear that anybody of any age can play H. Smith Richardson if they get vetted by the pro and his staff in order to play. There are currently multiple kids up there who could beat me that are under the age of 8. So it's no problem. There's a 7-year-old up there that shoots 80. So that can definitely happen. So I understand there was a proposal, but I think it's a little misleading to say that it's going to radically change the way that youth golf is up there. any youth golfer can participate at H. Smith if they're approved by the pro. That's a very key point to us, and the Golf Commission wanted to ensure that the pro had control over that aspect in order to have pace of play and enjoyment for the other golfers be consistent.
Well, I just ask that you keep that in mind, as we're about to invest a lot of money up there.
No, I understand. And we will.
Any further questions from the body? Representative Ambrose?
Peter Ambrose, District 1. It's my understanding that the focus is to rebuild the clubhouse. Are there any other thoughts in mind about perhaps a skating ring up there, or is that something you want to put on hold?
It was something that was talked about very heavily over the last 10 years, but I think the Board of Selectmen has sort of made it clear that that's not the priority. But I do think that's something the Building Committee will look at, like we talked about, of how that can either be done right now or added in later as time goes on. But as you can see from the Board of Selectmen's charge from December, they really did focus it strictly on golf.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the body? Representative Tallman?
Hi, Peter Tallman, District 8. I think this has to be done. I'm not a golfer. If anybody's seen me golf, you'd know that. But this is long overdue, and this is also a moneymaker. Maybe this will give us another excuse to bump up especially the out-of-town fees if we could, but that might help offset some of the costs. But it is something in town that makes a lot of money, and it's a great course. We should take care of it. Thanks.
Any further questions from the body? Representative Iacono, then Representative Walk.
I just have one further concern, and that has to do, and I know you have no say in this, but it just has to do with the size of the committee, not the composition of the committee. I think that there were some very fantastic people selected to serve on this. As I mentioned earlier, Don DiMartino for his presentation that he put together here, which was fantastic. But I'm concerned with 11 people and too many cooks spoiling the pot, and I'm just giving you that feedback. I know that was a decision of the Board of Selectmen, but that is a concern of mine.
Jay Walk, District 5. I'm in favor of this project. I think it's well overdue, as we all know. My question is, what's with the rest of the golf course? I mean, is the bunkers and the the drainage, because I remember we went through this that's all settled, or do?
I hear murmurs of 16. Okay. Well, 16 is before is going through the budget process now. We are trying to.
Because it should be done.
Yeah. So that 16 was proposed to be remodeled last year and was taken out of the budget. This year we put it back in, and hopefully it'll go through the process again and get through. And that will be year number 8 of our 10-year plan. So it's actually an 11-year plan now. But
good to hear. Thank you.
Representative Lefkowitz?
Hi, Nancy Lefkowitz, District 1. I understand that a skating rink and other cross-country and paddle would not be a priority, but is that going to be part of your cost-benefit analysis?
Yeah, I think the Building Committee would try to undertake that as well, with the assistance of probably the Parks and Rec Commission at that point to get that information.
Any further questions from the body? Seeing none, at this time I'd like to move on to the appointments of members to serve on the committee. So if we could have you come up one at a time, just very quickly introduce yourself and receive any questions from the body if there are any. We'll start with Edna Albrecht, if she's here.
I really go by Louise Albrecht. I've been living in Fairfield since 1995. I was previously employed by the state of Connecticut at Southern Connecticut State University as the Associate Athletic Director in charge of 22 sports and many facilities. Why am I on the Golf Commission, or got off the Golf Commission? I served 5 years on the Golf Commission. I was on the original committee for way back 10 years ago to look at the clubhouse, and that's my background.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to Christopher Kakatos, if he's here.
Good evening. My name is Chris Kokitis.
Sorry.
It's all right. It's a
I knew I was going to screw it up, so.
That's all right. It's been 35 years of it. So
I sympathize. My name's tough, too. Yeah.
I'm a resident of Fairfield, been here about 5 or 6 years now. I have, for the last 15 years, been building, designing and building as an owner's representative of various structures. I've done hospitals, towers, college housing, clubhouses, you name it. I've probably built it out of steel, concrete, or wood. I was part of the team that built the Westport PAL ice rink back in, that must have been like 96 or 97. I was pretty young then, but I volunteered with them and stayed active, working every year, constructing it, maintaining it, helping expand it, and so on. So when I saw the charge for this commission to be put out, being a new resident of town, I wanted to get involved and decided to submit my application. So I currently work in the city developing hotel properties and want to give back.
Thank you. Any questions from the members? Seeing none, thank you. Craig Curley?
Good evening. My name is Craig Curley. I've been a resident of Fairfield for the last 20 years. My wife and I have 2 young sons who have gone through the school system, and very happy to be part of the Fairfield community. I spent 5 years on the Golf Commission from 2005 to 2014, chairman for 4.5 of those 5 years. I was one of my first tasks as chairman was to put together the 10-year plan that has been used for 8 or 9 years since, and has been implemented across many commissions around the town. As that was kind of the pilot program, and that was modeled for other commissions as well. I currently work for Bank of America as part of the renewable energy finance team. So golf for me is a hobby, but I'm passionate about it. I'm an active member of the men's club and play on a regular basis. In addition to that, when my 2 sons were younger, was an active volunteer with the Fairfield National Little League for 10 years, and was part of the board, chairman of the field committee, which put together 3 major field renovation programs that rebuilt 3 Tungus, Melville, and Fairfield Woods, and saw all of those projects to fruition, all on time and under budget. In the aggregate, I think it was about $120,000 spend. So pales in comparison to this, but I'm familiar with the idea of managing budgets and processes. So I'm excited for this program to start, and look forward to being an active member on the committee and helping to keep this on task, on time, and under budget.
Thank you. Any questions from our members? Seeing none, thank you. Donald DiMartino?
Hello, Don DiMartino. I've been a Fairfield resident all my life. Thank you for those kind words, Ms. Iacona. And I just want to share my design and construction experience with the committee. I've got 40 years of design and construction experience as a professional licensed engineer. I worked for Turner Construction on many of the town school projects. Currently, I'm a facility manager at PerkinElmer in Shelton. A member of the Town Facilities Commission. I worked on the Stratfield Building Committee, and I'm familiar with the building committee process, and would love to serve on the committee and just help get the right facility for our town.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Frank Geiger?
Hello, Frank Geiger. Been a resident since 1980. I've served on the Golf Commission for approximately 4 years. I was fill-in. I've golfed at the golf course since 1980. I've never built anything, but I've been in the landscape business for 40 years. So I can be beneficial in tying in the golf course with the aesthetics of the new building. That's about it.
Okay. Any questions from our members? Seeing none, thank you. Tamara Guarino?
Hi, good evening. My name is Tamara Garino. I've been a resident of Fairfield for 15 years. I have 3 grown children. 2 of them are still in the system here in Fairfield. I would like to be a part of this committee because it is an asset that is not a viable one at this point, and it has a lot of potential. I am not a golfer, but I've only heard from several golfers that it's just a shame, the condition of Smith Richardson. My experience has been, I'm the former director of the Sportsplex at Fairfield, and I was there from inception, from the fit-up, until about a little less than a year ago. And I am currently a project accountant in New York City for a construction company that does institutions, their focus is institutions and health, the health industry. So I believe I would be beneficial in projecting and really accentuating where revenue can be created and used for growth and to give back to the town.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Kim Marshall?
Hi, I'm Kim Marshall. I've been a resident of Fairfield for 30 years. I've been in the construction industry my whole life. I've been on several building committees in town, Fairfield Woods. I was the chair of Osborne Hill. I've been on town facilities, and then there was a recent one for determining the viability of owners' reps for town construction. I'd be very interested in being, although I'm not a good golfer at all, I'd be very interested in being involved in this whole process for improving Smith Richardson.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Jack Slane?
Hello, I'm Jack Slane. I've been a resident since 1983. I served 10 years on the RTM. I was the moderator of the RTM for a while. I served on the Board of Education. I served on the Golf Commission, 4 years as vice chairman. I served as an alternate on the Zoning Board of Appeals. I served as an emergency appointment to the Board of Assessment Appeals. I was chairman of the Fairfield Woods Building Committee the first time they did it. I've been a practicing attorney since 1974 in the state of Connecticut, and my concentration is in construction law and land use, so I'm very familiar with American Institute of Architects contracts and such. I play at Smith Richardson all the time. I love the course, and I hope that the clubhouse could be as good as the course is. So,
Any questions from the body? Seeing none, thank you. Hal Schwartz?
Hi, my name is Hal Schwartz. I've been living in the town of Fairfield for 25 years, and the biggest asset that I have to this building committee is that I served on this body for 12 years. So my hope is to talk your language with them so we can make the process easy. So I know what building committees are like, and I know what kind of information you're looking for, so I'm hoping to be the person to smooth that over for everybody, because I understand what it's like to be on the other side of the table.
Questions from the body? Thank you. Rodney Van Dusen?
Good evening, I'm Rod Van Dusen. I've lived in town for 14 years. I was part of the Town Facilities Commission that wrote the report with Don. I've been in the construction industry for 35 years, engineering and construction management. I've designed everything from high-end residential to multi-story, 50-story residential buildings in Manhattan, marine terminals, and I think my expertise would lend greatly to the building committee.
Thank you. Any questions from the body? Seeing none, I think that we got everyone except Jeffrey Hendrickson, who I understand is not available tonight. So unless the body has any further questions on the update about the committee, seeing none, we'll move on. Ryan and Anthony, if you guys could attend on Monday, and any other people that you think are key to answer questions, we're not going to make the entire committee show up again on Monday, obviously. Thank you. Next, we have the bus grant for a 5-year bus replacement plan. Hi, Terry.
Good evening.
I hear a presentation on this.
Okay.
It's on, yeah.
They're like, this one is 14,000.
Terry Geoghegan, Director of Fairfield Human Services. This is a bus grant that I applied for last March, and we received the award of $48,000 for the new bus. We have a rotation schedule for replacement of new buses, and so this was one that I wanted to get to keep us up to date with our fleet. And so I decided to use, we have donations, a senior center donations account. So I figured we could use the match of $15,000 to cover the expense. The buses run between $60,000 to $63,000, so I have enough to do that. So I'm here to hope that you will approve the grant.
Do we have any questions from members of the body? Representative Bateson?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 1. How you doing, Terry? Quick question. I don't recall hearing about a bus replacement plan. Is this year one of the plan, or has it been around for a while?
It has been around for a while. We've had it since I've been here, about 5 years ago. So before I came, the DPW garage mechanics, as well as our bus drivers, looked at the life of the buses. You should have, if you've seen in the grant, there is a rotation schedule there.
That's where it is?
Yes, it is.
And that's what you consider your replacement plan?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Sure
Thanks.
thing.
Representative Iacono?
I just wanted to compliment you for all the work that you do over at the Senior Center and for finding this grant. This is exactly the kind of thing that we need to be doing as, the department heads need to be doing to move their departments forward, and you're really doing that. So thank you. I was on the bus with the rotted out bottom that you had the rug on. Some of us went on that tour a couple years ago, so this is great. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Thank you.
Further questions from the body? Seeing none, thank you. And I just want to remind our members that we have an open house at the Senior Center on
Yes.
February 10th,
Yes.
right?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is the Harbor Management Plan Update Grant.
Good evening. I'm Jim Harmon. I'm the chairman of the Harbor Management Commission, and I'm here with Town Engineer Bill Hurley to talk actually about two grants tonight. I guess we'll take them one at a time. These are grants that were approved and funded by the Connecticut State Port Authority under their Small Harbor Improvement Projects Program, which they have the nice acronym of SHIP. So we're looking for your go-ahead to accept these two grants and to spend the town's portion of these programs. The Commission applied for these grants in 2017. They were approved by the Port Authority and the State Bonding Commission at the end of November. The first grant is for $6,500, and it will pay for about half the cost of updating the town's or the Commission's harbor management plan. The current plan was adopted by the RTM in 1995. And since its adoption 28 years ago, we've accomplished a lot of the original objectives. We have some new challenges and goals, and the updates will give us the guidance and justification that we need to deal with those new projects. The plan is about 180 pages of narrative with 30 pages of figures and tables. And updating it will help us with permitting and funding for future projects, including the biggest one that we have now, which is dealing with a sandbar that's been growing at the mouth of the harbor. Also, when we review proposed private projects in the harbor, our criteria are based on consistency with the plan, so it's good for us to have an up-to-date plan. The town's share of this project will be about $6,500, and it will come from the Southport Harbor Maintenance Account, which is funded by mooring fees and by the people who use the harbor, and it currently has about $136,000 in it, so that'll just make a small dent in that account.
Okay, any questions from members of the body on either of the two grants? Representative Sundman, sorry. Yeah, Sundman.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, to Jim.
Yeah.
Will they be taking the docks out when they're doing the dredging at Lower Wharf?
Yes,
I mean,
part of the project
yeah, Eric.
is to dredge the area of the launching ramp and the Lower Wharf dinghy docks to a depth of 3 to 6 feet at low tide. That'll make them usable regardless of the tide. Basically, at a low tide, it's pretty much a mud flat there right now.
Will that area extend to the Lower Wharf, that big sand dune that's built up against the corner up in there?
Are you talking about the one on the Country Club side of the harbor, or on the
On the
other
Lower
side?
Wharf.
On the Lower Wharf side,
There's a big
yes, the
dune.
plan is to dredge that area out to, as I said, 3 to 6 feet. Yeah, there's a drawing in the packet that was distributed that shows the dredging area.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any further questions from the body on either grant? Seeing none? Bill, did you guys present on both grants? Do you have anything more on the dredging?
Well, the first one was the small grant for updating the harbor management plan. The larger one is $266,000. And as we were discussing a moment ago, the plan there is to dredge out the area by the launching ramp and the dinghy docks at the yacht yard, so that those will be usable regardless of the tide. And there's a small contribution from the town for that to complete the improvements to the launching ramp that we did started in 2016, and that money will come from a capital account that was set aside for the project a number of years ago.
Very good. Okay. Representative Iacono?
I just wanted to thank you again for seeking out grants to help offset the costs for this.
Well, this Port Authority Ship Grant Program is an ongoing thing, and so we'll be applying for more of these.
That's the benefit of the management plan as well. Gives us an opportunity to seek more grants. And just wanted to let everybody know that Fairfield was only one of 4 municipalities that were awarded a dredging project authorized by the Bond Commission. So,
Good work.
Good job.
Any further questions from the body? Seeing none, thank you both. Next up, we have the Board of Ed teachers contract.
Ready?
Ready.
So first, Philip Dwyer, Chairman of the Board of Education. First, I want to thank the RTM for the general support that they've provided to the school system, and specifically to our teaching staff, who are dedicated to working with the 10,000 students that we serve. For those of you who are not familiar, The state of Connecticut has some very strict timelines on negotiating with certified staff, teaching staff, and so we began the negotiations on August 1st, held a series of meetings. The negotiating committee that acted on behalf of the Board of Ed diligently represented the concerns that the Board of Ed had to ensure that we had a fair contract. But I will also say that the FEA negotiating committee also diligently represented the concerns of their members and dealt with a number of issues. I will compliment the FEA because while some of these issues are very difficult to talk about and find a resolution to, they have always remained committed to coming to resolution through either negotiation or mediation. And at the end of the day, they put the needs of the students ahead of their own individual members. And that is true for the other unions that are part of the public school system. They're all dedicated to serving your students. So the Board of Ed considered the contract and approved it, and we recommend it for your consideration. And our attorney, who does all the negotiating for us in terms of representing our needs and also puts the contract together, is here to go through the material that we sent to you and answer any questions that you have. And he wants to make a couple of comments on that, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Thank you. Stephen Sedor, counsel for the Board of Ed. I would like to go through the main points of the agreement that we've reached, and then when we are done, I'll be glad to take any questions that you have. The agreement that we've reached with the teachers is going to be a 3-year deal effective July 1 of 2018, and the agreement on the wages would be as follows. For the first year of the contract, the 2018-19 school year, teachers would advance 1/2 step, and those that are at max step would receive 1% general wage increase. And in percentage, that's a 1.55% total increase. For the next year of the contract, teachers would again advance 1/2 step, and there would be a 1.64% general wage increase to the entire bargaining unit. That represents an increase of 2.92%. And then for the final year of the contract, all teachers would advance 1 step, and there would be a 1.0% general wage increase for a total of 3.52%, and a total increase for the agreement of 7.99%. Now, what I wanted to take just a moment to mention is that in this agreement, the teachers are going to advance a total of 2 steps, not 3 steps, through the life of the contract, and we view that as a very significant and certainly well-received concession by the teachers. Typically, bargaining units wish to advance a step each year. I also want to make sure that I'm as clear as I can in case anyone's unsure about what I'm referring to as the cost of increment. There are 19 steps in the teacher's contract, 1 through 19, and at each step, as they go through each step, 1 to 2, 3 to 2 to 3, there is a higher salary. In addition to that, there are multiple lanes, as I would call them, based on the education that the teacher has, BA, MA, and so on. So for each time they go up a step, they advance in salary. The dollar amount that it costs for every teacher to move a step is what's called the cost of increment. And that can also be expressed as a percentage. The total cost really divided by the total cost of the increment divided by the total cost of the salary schedule is the percentage. It does not mean that everybody who makes a step gets the same amount of money. It's simply the dollar cost in the aggregate of moving through the entire step for a year. So as you'll see, the fact that the teachers are moving 2 instead of 3 steps through the contract life is something that is certainly well received. To talk about the cost of the contract and different ways to look at it, starting with what the base year is, which is the year we're in, the projected salary account is $80,060,417, and there's 963 teachers. If you look at what each year costs, the projected cost for 2018-19, the cost of the step advancement is $971,915, and the projected cost of the 1% increase to max is $272,254. For those who are looking at the memo, I'm not going to go through each and every step because I'm sure you can read just as well as I can. But in the end, what you'll find is that the total increase due to the step advancements is about $4 million, and the total increase due to general wage increases is $2,480,000. And just to mention one other thing about the steps, if they were to move a full step each year of the contract, the total cost would be about $5,670,000, where the actual step cost is $4,085,000. We have also provided some other breakouts of how to analyze the contract as well. On page 3 of the memo, you'll see that there's broken out average wage increases for each year by position. I noted how there's multiple lanes depending upon the education of the teacher. So you'll see if you're a BA in the 18-19 school year, you have a $995 average increase. That doesn't mean every teacher is getting $995. It means that the average salary increase for those with a BA in steps 1 through 19 get that raise. And that's the same all the way across. And in addition, we've also provided to you what the average wage increase would be for those employees who are at the max step. Again, that's not what everyone will get. That's what the average would be. Obviously, just it makes sense, but in case I'm being confusing, if you're at the top step, then there's no cost of increment because you don't have anywhere else to go. So the only increase you would get would be the general wage increase, and that's what's reflected in the final chart for you. Moving on to insurance, we've provided for you the head count approximately of the number of teachers that take insurance. Right now, the teachers are paying 23% premium cost share for their health insurance, which is at the very top of that in the state. I did research along the lines when we were bargaining the contract and again before tonight, and I was unable to find another teacher's unit that pays 23% or more. So for the duration of this contract, the teachers will stay on the state 2.0 plan, and they will continue to pay 23% premium cost share through the life of the contract. Now, I'd like to just ask the superintendent to make a couple of remarks about keeping the premium cost share at 23% for the duration of the contract, because it is important to us that we're able to continue to attract quality teachers. Dr. Jones?
Thank you, and I think you actually just said it. It really is about staying competitive. In this region, you know, we compete with the localities that are close to us. We don't compete right now on salary, and the two things that teachers look at when we are recruiting and we want to retain staff are salary and their benefits. And as we did the research, and it was also noted by FEA that they are the highest in the state, and we do want to retain our competitiveness in Fairfield so we can get the best teachers and keep the teachers that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. I would note, as I mentioned a moment ago, the teachers, as all board units are in, they're in the state 2.0 insurance plan. And at the beginning of this school year, in just prior to October, municipalities and school districts were given the option of accepting changes made by the State 2.0 plan, changes to the structure of the insurance. The options were to accept the changes effective October 1st of 2017 or July 1 of 2018. Fairfield's bargaining units went and accepted the change effective October of 2017, and you'll see that we noted there's a projected savings for the 17-18 year as a result of those plan design changes of approximately $867,000. We've also provided for you, as one of the exhibits, CABE's statement, presentation, I should say, of other settlements for teachers in the state. And I've also provided for you some comparative settlements. By comparative, what I mean are settlements that have taken place in Fairfield County and District Reference Group B. We are in DIRG B here in Fairfield, and you'll see also that on the CABE document that I provided for you, we provided what each school district's DIRG is. And so if you look at the comparative settlements, the agreement that we have right now wage-wise is really right thick in the middle of the other DIRG and Fairfield County school districts.
Can I make one other?
Sure.
For those of you who are new, the time frame that you have to negotiate these contracts is pegged to when the Board of Finance begins review of the budget. And so not all towns go through contract at the same time. Fairfield is among the earliest towns, and so when we're negotiating, we only have really 5 or 6 or 7 school districts that will settle about the same time we do. It's not till you get to the end of the year that you can get a full list of other towns. And so this represents those towns that are in contract negotiations virtually at the same time we are.
Thanks, Phil. You can read through the language changes as well as I can, so I don't wish to take your time with that. I just would like to emphasize a few, mainly that if the state does in the future place the TRB burden back on the town, we can reopen the contract for further negotiations on the impact of that. And then in addition to that, if there is a Cadillac tax implication in this matter, and the board would be charged with it, we can reopen the contract for that as well. The final thing that I'd just like to make and take note of is the arbitration process. 3 years ago, we went to interest arbitration with the administrators, and at that point in time, the sole issues on the table were the plan design for health insurance and what the premium cost share would be for the health insurance. By the time all of the fees and expenses, the arbitrator fees, the transcript fees, and everything else, I believe the expense was approximately $90,000. And what I could say is, with respect to this particular situation, there are far more many issues that have been proposed. There's probably in excess of 3 dozen issues that both parties have proposed that, if the matter goes to interest arbitration, could potentially be back on the table and made an issue at the arbitration. If that were the case, the arbitration costs, I would say, would more than double easily what it was to go to interest arbitration 3 years ago on the administrators. I'd just also like to note, too, that several of the teachers' unions' proposals, if they were successful, I don't want to really get into the details at the moment, but if successful, could likely cause the Board of Education to have to hire additional teachers, okay? And so that would then cause an additional cost in addition to the arbitration fees that you would certainly incur. So I just wanted to make sure that I expressed that to you in clear and unequivocal terms. And I'll take any questions, or will take any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you. Before I open it up to questions, we do have copies of the contract, if anyone wants a copy right now to follow along. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pass this to Ad. Got 2 sets for you. Whoever has it. Anybody else? Question or contract? All right, Representative Garskoff.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to, through you, follow up to Dr. Jones, if that's okay, about your comment about that we don't compete on salary. Could you explain that, please?
For the camera, I will take.
Good, they switched seats. Thank you. We do have some localities next to us that actually are difficult for us to compete with because their teacher scale pays more than we do in Fairfield. We are a wonderful school district, and teachers like to be here for a reason, but those two things, salary and benefits, do matter, and especially when we start getting to the point that our benefit and what they're going to contribute to their insurance is greater than anywhere else that would be in Connecticut.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Whether I'm in shot or not. Over the last decade, some of you have noticed that, as we frequently comment, the per pupil expenditure amount has been, now it's kind of like in the bottom half of the state instead it used to be in the, closer to the top quarter. Similar things have happened with our salaries over the last decade. And so the wider the gap is, the more a 5-year, 6-year teacher with an MA and looks at, I could drive to Westport and get a lot more money, and then they look at, but they enjoy teaching in Fairfield, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the wider the gap, the more difficult it is. And so that's just an issue that over time we have to recognize.
Representative Lefkowitz.
Hi, Nancy Lefkowitz, District 1. I'm curious about the language changes. For elementary school teachers, 40 minutes, what's a change from? And then the second, I'm just curious what the impetus behind changing guidance counselor to school counselor is about?
As far as, if I can recall from the negotiations, the term guidance counselor is now less used, and the more frequent and new used term is school counselors. Nothing really more than that. No implication of that. And then I'm sorry, your further 40
minutes.
The question was not necessarily, if I recall, 40 minutes of the prep time. It was the excluding the wraparound time, so that in other words, the 40 minutes would be continuous as opposed to potentially being, yeah.
And is that the same with the high school teacher?
Correct.
Allowing them one block? Okay.
Representative Spoliar.
Thank you. Marcy Spoliar, District 4. Getting back to the teacher salaries, I was concerned because for me, if you say a 3% increase, let's just say based on $100, is a lot different than a 3% increase based on a $200 salary. So I did look at the corresponding salaries for both Trumbull and Westport and did notice that their rankings were considerably higher for a starting salary teacher as well as a more experienced teacher. I didn't know if you were able to provide those comparisons to the RTM so they can see them as well.
The step process, that means 1 step, 1 year. So there are 19 steps, and there are 5 lanes. So 5 times 19 is 90 data points. And you can't really compare one town to the other because maybe another town only has 14 steps. And so a direct comparison is not easy. You could do a lot of analysis in that regard, but to collect 90 data points times 20 districts and say, where do we all fit in, it is difficult. The FEA has done some analysis about that, but that's their data, not our data. And I'll say, in the main, in the first 5 years of salaries, the other districts can be higher, sometimes significantly higher. As you get to step 17, 18, 19, our salaries then become, by example, a BA first year, virtually every district that you look at pays more than we do. You get to year 19 for a sixth year degree, and our salary is competitive with about half the districts. So over time, we do better than we do with the beginning salaries. But it would be a very laborious salary study because there is no state agency that collects this information and you can push a button and get it all printed out. You literally would have to go contract by contract from the towns that you wanted to study, pull out all of the step increases, and then try to do some extrapolation to say, well, year 5 for them is more like year 7 to us, and so I think it would be difficult to provide that in a direct survey to the RTM, but in the main, I think that's what you'd find happening.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Bateson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 1. A couple of quick questions. I see on the packet I just got from Phil, it looks like when you refer to there's no step taken for one of the 3 years, you're splitting it half and half over the first 2 years of the contract?
Yes.
Okay, can you just, what were the general wage increases as a percentage for year 1, 2, and 3? I thought I heard you
Just the
say...
general wage increase?
Yes.
The first year, it's 1% to max only.
1% for people who are on step 19.
Okay.
No general wage increase for...
Everybody else.
So those people at step 19 that aren't getting a step, they're getting a 1% wage increase? That's the
right.
only wage increase in year 1?
The only increase in year 1.
Okay, year 2,
1.64 for the entire bargaining unit,
including year 19?
including year 19. And then year 3, 1% to the entire unit.
Okay. General question, when I look at the dollar impact of the contract over the 3 years, are we assuming no movement in personnel? When I say no movement, no turnover.
Yeah, you have to. That's the only way. You get a snapshot in time. But certainly, what you're getting at is correct. There is going to be movement over time because you're going to get retirements, you're going to get attrition. Typically, retirements will cause the amount that you would spend in the future on the salary schedule to decrease because someone retires, and if somebody who comes in on a lower step replaces them, there's a savings. So typically, that type of stuff, the attrition and the retirements, cause the future projected salary schedule to actually be lower than it turns out to be.
Okay, Dr. Jones, I don't need the science for what you do on the turnover, but I know, what are you anticipating this year?
19.
19. And what did you do last year? I think you said you were on the money?
24.
And what did we come in at?
24.
All right, thank you.
Further questions from the body? Representative Messina?
Hi, Christina Messina, District 8. You mentioned that our 23% on the insurance is high. Is there a state average or going rate, so to speak?
I
The
don't know
ballpark
that
of
I
the
could
Connecticut
say.
average?
I don't know that I could say that there is a state average. What I could do is, for this year, I could refer you to what is in the CABE documents right there. And from the CABE documents, what's reported, it's high teens.
Right, yeah, I saw that. Okay, thank you. I have one more question. If I look at page 2, the two numbers that are in the middle, the $4 million number and change and the $2 million number, if I add those two, is that the total cost of the entire contract?
Yeah,
over
that's
the 3
the
years?
the
Okay.
cost of general wage increase and step
Right.
over
Thank
the
you. Over the 3
3-year
years.
period.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Representative Horton?
Hi, Margaret Horton, District 9. I'm just coming up to speed in a learning curve on all of this, and I have
Sure.
2 quick questions. First, can you help me understand the difference between the 10-month teachers and the 10-and-a-half-month teachers?
That'd probably be best explained by Dr. Jones if you could.
Okay.
I'm Colleen Deasy. I'm the Executive Director of Personnel and Legal Services for Fairfield Public Schools. Most of our teachers, as you can see in, I believe it's Exhibit 3, has the numbers broken down by where people are in the 2 salary charts. Most of our teachers are 10-month employees. We have a few 10-and-a-half-month employees. They're mostly our counselors, school counselors now instead of guidance counselors, school psychologists, people of that ilk who need to do a little more before and after school starts with us. They have a longer school year, so we pay them accordingly.
Okay. And then second question is, certainly I know bachelor, master's, PhD. Is 6th year and 7th year just exactly what it is? Like somebody who's been teaching 6th year?
No, it's
Okay.
so the 6th year
Thank you.
is 30 credits beyond the master's degree. That's a requirement in order to be an administrator, is to have that degree. 7th year is actually defunct. The people who have that are grandfathered into it, but it's not something that we award a movement to that lane anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Hurley?
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. So what I think I heard from Chairman Dwyer and Superintendent Jones is that on a PPE basis, Fairfield is significantly behind comparable districts. And from Dr. Jones, when it comes to salary and wage increases, that we're significantly below comparable districts in the area. And number one, can you confirm if that's what you said? And then secondly, if we're at a disadvantage in terms of wages and compensation, is the level of turnover we're experiencing in the district for the periods in which we've been lagging our peer districts at a higher level? And then secondly, if you do believe that we are, significantly behind compared to comparable school districts, do you believe that this contract fixes that issue? Or if it doesn't fix that issue, how close does it come to fixing this disparity in wages in which you're, concerned about losing personnel? Thank you.
About 2 years ago, maybe 3, we did do a survey through exit interviews of the 66 certified staff who left the district. At the time, about 22 of them were retirees, and then the next biggest group were those teachers whose family had relocated out of the area or out of state, and so they moved with their families there. Teachers who had a child and decided not to come back to work. So you go down through that, and we did find about 15% of them that left for no clear reason. Maybe the reason was salary, but there's no way to determine that. Does this contract solve that problem?
Can we just go back to that point? What I'm interested in knowing is, you're saying that if we don't increase the salary and benefits compared to other districts, that we're going to run the risk of losing, or we're losing teachers. And what I want to know is, compared to those same districts in which we are, not paying as much, are they keeping employees longer than we are, or are we losing at a higher rate?
We have about an 8% turnover rate. Again, the state does not do a lot of data information, so there's no way for us to compare ourselves with other districts because there's just no data on that. So I can't tell you whether 8% is better or worse.
Are those just sort of, are Dr. Jones's comments and just sort of anecdotal observations? And maybe she could speak to that point. I would appreciate that.
Either that or the executive director of HR, who is actually responsible for the recruiting of students. I'll ask which one of them they think is in the best position.
So not only do we lose people to other districts, one of our concerns is really filling those spots once they're open, and we do have turnover, even if it is for retirement or for people moving or all of those reasons. We get these spots in the really high need and shortage areas is what they're called: special needs, special education, science, math in high school. All of those areas are extremely difficult to fill, and when we're competing with other places who are also struggling to fill those spots, who are offering significantly more money to the new teachers or even to teachers on the highest step who have a great deal of experience and a great deal of expertise, we can't compete because those people are in very high demand. So that's where this salary scale tries to bridge that gap a bit, but to answer your question, no, I don't think it gets us much closer to solving it.
Again, in terms of having actual data, the statement made was that because of where our salary and benefits are at, that it causes pressure and we end up losing teachers and staff. Does the district have any hard data comparing the level of turnover at the Fairfield Public School System compared to other comparable districts at similar levels?
We don't have any data about other school districts, no.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the body? Representative Gerber, then Representative Bateson.
Yeah, hi. I may have a question for Dr. Jones. I was taking a look at the proposed budget that was posted online. I noticed that teaching staff and certified support staff, the increase looks like it's about $500,000 in there, $551,000, whereas in here the total was something like, more than twice that for increment and general wage increase. What would account for the difference between what's in the budget and what's in this teacher's contract?
So as Steve mentioned, when you do a contract, you have to pick a point in time, what staff are employed by you at the beginning of the contract negotiation period, 963.3 FTEs. And you do the math on those employees specifically. So what accounts for the difference? We do get turnover, and when we do get turnover, there is savings in salaries. We do get enrollment changes from one school to the other, and so if we have 3 less sections of elementary school in a particular year, then those are 3 less teachers that we employ. And so those are the 2 principal reasons why there will be a difference from one year, from the math of a contract versus what it actually ends up being in terms of a budget.
But so I'm a little confused. So what matters to this body actually would be, should be in my opinion, would be what was the old contract and what's the new contract, and what is the increase in this contract over the old contract. When we talk about an increase, it's not the increase in the total wages, assuming nobody retires or leaves. It would be what has changed. So what has changed in this contract? For example, if you took the old contract, the final year, the final table for 2018, just assume that we didn't renegotiate it and everyone just moves up a step. What would that increase be? Because that's already a contractual increase.
Let me, just one modification of your statement. Yes, it's a contractual increase, but if a year 18 employee retires and you replace them with a year 4 employee, you've saved salary dollars. So by the contract negotiation, yes, that year 18 employee to 19 would cost a certain amount of money, but when you're budgeting for them in after all the contract math is done, you don't budget for the higher salary, you budget for the new employee.
I understand that, but I'm looking at a number on this contract that says total increase for the agreement is 7.99%. That doesn't sound correct to me. That sounds like if you were to compare this to the old agreement, which already had steps in it, there would be a much smaller increase that was negotiated in this agreement, because here you're saying steps that were already agreed to are part of this increase. So we didn't negotiate a 7.99% increase. We took an old contract and increased it by something significantly less than that.
Correct.
So do we have the number of, instead of, I think to compare apples and oranges, we would need to see, assume everyone stayed in the final year of the current schedule, the current contract. What would happen if we just extended it by a year and kept that final schedule?
If we just accepted the schedule as it exists for the 17-18 school year, the step increase, assuming everybody moved, would be approximately $1.94 million, $1,943,000, 2.43%. It's on page 2. When you're going to try and calculate a projection for 3 years, it's for collective bargaining purposes anyway. It's a snapshot in time, and the projections are based on that snapshot in time for the next 3 years. But clearly, there's going to be attrition and so forth over those 3 years.
Right. So what we're seeing here is a number, the 7.99% increase, or the increases per year. It's kind of I'm not quite sure why we even use that number. There's two numbers of interest to me. Is what is the change in this contract versus the old contract? So you would subtract out the 1943 from, I would subtract that out and say, okay, the cost of the new contract is this, is the increment of there's two things, I think. One is people at the final step get get an increase, and then you have your general wage increase. Everyone else, everyone else basically is getting what was they've already been promised.
Well, although, and that
They're getting less.
That step increment is in there, as are what the general wage increase numbers. If you look on page 2 of the memo,
Right.
it breaks it out what the the gross wage increase numbers are for each year based on the percentage that was agreed to in the contract. So, for example, under the 2018-19 school year, where it says GWI cost, which is the 1% to max, it's $272,254. And the gross wage increase dollars are set forth or the projected gross wage increase dollars are set forth under the 2019-20 and 2020-2021 school year. And just to briefly answer, what's different about the contract is in the first 2 years, they're only moving a half a step, not a complete step. They don't move a full step until the 3rd year.
Well, that actually, in reality, means they're not moving a step in the first year, right? In the second year, they're moving a step.
No, actually not really. They move the value. In the first year, what they're going to do is they're going to move the dollar value of so if you're on step 1, instead of going to step 2, you're going to move to an imaginary step 1.5, which is essentially the dollar value of the average between step 1 and 2. So step 1 was $50, step 2 was $100, you're moving to a step.
So you actually are creating that in your systems. You are creating a half step. Okay, I thought.
We're not creating a half step to simplify the salary schedule. We're creating a step that is the dollar value equivalent of the half step.
Okay.
But in all other regards, it's the same.
Well, in anticipation of your answers just now, the 2480 .077, if you know, that total increase off of the 2018 number, that looks like a total increase of 3%. And if you divide that by 3, that's a 1% per year, you know, increase. So that's a lot different than saying we're increasing 8% over 3 years.
I think Mr. Gerber made a similar point when we were looking at the administrator's contract. Correct. The new money that is in this contract is closer to the 1% number, the 2,480, in terms of new money. And in fact, it's actually less than that, because if we had simply gone to the teachers and said a 0 increase and you get all 3 steps, it would have cost us $5.7 million instead of the 4.1 that it's actually costing us.
Right.
That's what Mr. Sedor mentioned by saying that was a significant give back by our teachers group. And so, yes, the general wage increase, which is what you really bargained for, is a very, very modest increase.
I mean, that's not 100% clear probably to people here. People here probably are looking at this and saying, we negotiated a contract that over 3 years is about 8% more than it was. That's really not the case. It's 3% more than it was. And the other point...
If I could just interrupt, it is only 3% more based on bargaining, but indeed, those step increases do cost us money.
The step increases cost us money. They were agreed to, but they're also a progression in your career, and people drop off, which you're not, when you look at the budget, it's clear they drop out. So, you know, you're talking about a progression in the career, and then people are gone, then people come in at that shouldn't really, in my opinion, doesn't really belong here unless you make some estimate, you know, of what you were going to save by people dropping off, which, you know, looking at the budget, apparently Dr. Jones has an algorithm that she uses, and she can project it pretty well, you know, obviously not with 100% accuracy, but it's something like a $1.2 million reduction last year, and they're expecting something like a $1.3 million reduction this year. So without looking at that, you're looking at an 8% 3-year increase. It looks like a lot, but or it doesn't really look like a lot, but it looks like a lot more than it actually is. And so if we look at the budget in wages for the 2 bargaining units, I mean, you don't see the numbers because they'll never show up.
And I'll say that we negotiate this contract in an August, September, October period, well before when the budget is actually constructed. And you have to make a series of assumptions. How many retirees, how many teachers will leave, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so when you negotiate a contract with a union, they start with the 80 million number and say that's what our members are earning right now. Based on the contract, what will those members, if they stay, earn in the future? It would be very difficult to try and convert that number to a series of assumptions for the 2nd year, 3rd year of the contract.
It would be difficult, but it's also very misleading not to show something. I mean, it's very misleading. I mean, it's never going to be 8%, right? I mean,
it may very well not be with retirements and replacements with teachers at a lower step. It may not.
which is, I mean, if you look at the last 5 years, when have we ever not had saving? You know, we should at least be able to look at, as a body, we should be able to look at, you know, the last 5 years and see what those savings have been over a 5-year period. So I think I've made my point, but I'm going to make some requests. I don't know if I should do them now or hold off for an email, but, you know, I would like to see some valid, decent assumptions, so we're not just showing all the, you know, the bad stuff that could happen assuming no one retires, which never happens. But we've got, you know, people in our town, and, you know, everyone's going to stand up and they're hurting and all this, but we're talking about really what's more like a 1% annual increase, and it looks like to me over what we had negotiated before. And so I think we need a projection. We already have a projection for 2018-19, which is showing a 0.6% increase in this line item, or 0.7 maybe. And then we just need a projection for the following 2 years after that, and maybe a range of what, high, low range or something, so that everyone can feel comfortable that this isn't exactly an 8% increase over 3 years. But, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Bill, my suggestion is to put that in an email to me, and I'll make the request. Representative Bateson, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 1. Quick question. It's more along the lines of an organizational question. I see year 1, 2, and 3, 1.5%, 2.9%, and 3.5%. When we go, the BOE, when you sit down and try and absorb these things, wouldn't it behoove the organization to smooth that? Why does it look like we're back-ending it with a high percentage? I mean, if I'm running an organization and I have an option in front of me, especially with numbers like this, which are felt all throughout the budget, considering the size of this unit, why wouldn't we want to smooth that out over 3 years when we sit down at the table? Why do we escalate up to there? If I'm running the organization, year 1, easy to absorb. Year 3, different story. So what's the rationale when we sit down to negotiate to enter into an agreement like that?
So you're asking me to tell you what our negotiating strategy was in public?
No, I'm asking you as chairman of the Board of Education why you would go from 1.5, 2 point that to 3.5. It just seems if you're running an organization, that's difficult to absorb. I would rather see smoothness. If I'm a CEO, level it out. I want to know what I'm dealing with easily.
Two things. We were negotiating this contract when the state did not have a budget, when the governor was proposing $9 million of retirement pay cost to go to Fairfield, and the Board of Ed wanted to get as low a possible increase in the 18-19 year because of the uncertainty involved in what is now the current year, in all likelihood the next year. And so that was the rationale as to why we did this. At the same time, our hope was that we would achieve a 3-year salary increase that represented, I'll say, the average of districts in our area. We've achieved that for all intents and purposes. And by spreading it over 3 years in 3 different amounts each year, I took a salary and I said, okay, 1.55, 2 point something, 3 point something, what's the final salary that an average teacher would get? And then I did the same thing by saying, well, take the 799 and just divide it by 3 and, quote, smooth it out. The average salary ended up being virtually the same at the end of the 3-year contract. Virtually the same. So in year 3, the cost of the salaries will be about what they would have been. And I'm talking about single digits difference. About what it would have been had we done a 3-year average. But this saved us money in this particular year, 18-19, when we thought we were most at risk with the lack of a state budget and the retirement fund conversations that were the atmosphere within which we were negotiating in the September-October period. So that's the best answer I can give you as to what we were thinking of.
Thank you.
And I don't dispute Mr. Bateson's comment. You could make another series of assumptions and say, well, maybe it would have been better this way. But the Board of Ed's considered opinion was that this was in the best interest of the Fairfield Public Schools, to have a low cost in the first year.
Representative Barretts?
Steve Barretts, District 6. Correct me if I'm wrong, it appears to be backloaded because of the teacher give back of that step increase in the first 2 years?
I don't know that I would phrase it that way, but what you're saying is that there's the half steps. That's the year that they get the full step is the year that they have the highest. Yes.
Yes.
That's absolutely correct.
Representative Dean?
This question is directed towards Chairman Dwyer. I just wanted to revisit the information you had given prior to Mr. Hurley, or Representative Hurley's question with regards, you had quoted 66 certified teachers during an exit interview data taking. What year was that taken again?
I think at the end of the 13-14 year, I believe, by my memory.
Is that about the same for every year since?
On average, that has been our turnover. If you looked at it over a 15 or 20-year period, the FEA at least reported that they think that the turnover rate has increased over that period of time. We do not have the data internal to ourselves to say what happened in 2005-06. We just don't have it. And so I think the FEA does not make up numbers, and I think they are probably accurate to say that over the course of a 10-15-year period, we probably have had higher turnover. And yes, a portion of that may be the slippage of salaries, but that's not the only reason. We had 44 teachers retire the year that the teacher evaluation system came in, the SBAC test in the Common Core. And there may have been a group of teachers, as reported at the time by the head of the union, who said, I've got 2 years to go and I'm going to deal with the evaluation system, SBAC, and Common Core and change all my curriculum. Thanks, but no thanks. So in that particular year, we had 44 teachers leave. But beyond that anomaly, we've been having kind of the average number. Retirees have been growing, I think, when Ms. Iacona was on the board, maybe we were at 11 or 12, and next year we'll be at 19. So the retirees have been growing steadily over the last decade.
Thank you. Actually, my question was more focused towards the 15 that left with no clear reason. That what I'm getting at is
I said 15%, so 15% of the 66 would be 9.
so it's 9%.
Yeah.
Okay, because 9 people.
15% of the 66 people, which is approximately 9 people.
All right. So those 9 people would have to be replaced as well for leaving for
Yes.
other reasons.
Correct.
Potentially, they could have left for greener pastures, if you will. Who knows? About how much does it cost to solicit and hire a new teacher?
I think that's a question is when we...
Aside from their salaries, I mean, just the...
Yeah. Let's see, 35,000 less 85,000 is about 50. We budget for replacement teachers at, what's the number that we normally budget? Huh? 40,000. Yeah. So when we know we have a vacancy, we will budget 40,000 for that teacher position. No, it's got to be higher than that. Oh, the savings, but we probably hire about 55, I think. Okay, 75,000 is what we budget for.
And that's to cover the cost of all teachers that have to be replaced each year, 75,000?
The average cost of individual teachers, some which may be hired with a lot of experience to teach physics because that's what we need to pay in order to get that person, and some might be 2-3 years experience. So on average, it's 75.
And that's including their salary then?
That's just the
Okay.
salary, yeah.
Okay, that actually wasn't really my question. My question was about how much does it cost to advertise and go through the whole process of
That,
to replace teachers in general.
that's a different question.
I don't have a breakout per teacher of what that costs.
I don't think you were expecting that question, so
Wasn't.
that's, I'm expecting that answer.
But we do have a recruitment budget that we use for recruitment fairs, and it's definitely more an issue of staff time, staff to perform interviews on the building level to hire that position, going through sorting who would be the best candidate, making the selection, and then internal staff here in central office getting that person set up on all of our technology. We have new teacher orientation for a few days in the summer to get anyone who's a brand new teacher or new to the district settled in. So it's a great effort that involves a lot of different staff and a great deal of staff time. So I don't have a quantification of that, but it does cost something up from the district each time someone leaves.
I would be curious and like to know about how much it does cost us every time we need to replace a teacher, whether it's through retirement, through deciding to stay home to take care of their family, whether they're relocating or just leaving for greener pastures.
We can work on a rough estimate for
Thank
that.
you very much.
Representative Tallman?
Moderator Pierce, while the HR director's still there, sorry. I'm sorry, I just...
No, I moved on to Representative Tallman.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. No, that's all right.
Hi, Peter Tallman, District 8. I think you were asking what is the cost to replace the teacher, the actual going out and hiring the teacher, right? Not what the new wages are. And that's really overhead.
Right.
Okay,
Correct.
so it really doesn't cost us anything outside of your small budget. But if we didn't have to hire people, you wouldn't have a job. So the point is, it's part of our overhead. There's not a specific cost assigned to hiring a teacher. It's part of your job.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Representative Iacono?
Sorry, I just had while you were there, I had a question on the salary schedule itself. So for a starting salary for BA at step 1 is $47,120. Do we hire people with BAs?
Absolutely.
So there's this, I guess, my misperceived myth that you can't get a teaching job unless you have your master's.
That's not untrue. It certainly helps to have a master's, and you eventually need to get a master's to keep your certification, though
The
for a
Connecticut
first-year
law is
teacher,
still that you have to
we
be
can
working
start
for-
someone out at bachelor step 1 with the expectation that they'll grow from there.
Gotcha.
If you look at the second exhibit on step information.
Uh-huh.
Oh, sorry. The second exhibit on the, that's attached, it gives the step placement for the 17-18 year of the teachers, both 10 month and 10 and a
The number of
half.
people at BA at.
So it
gotcha.
has for each lane, it has who's where.
Thank you.
Further questions from the body?
I have additional
All
questions.
right, Representative Iacono?
Thank you. In terms of this particular contract, was this a unanimous vote of the Board of Education?
6-3,
Has that ever happened before?
yes.
Do you know what the numbers were and when?
3 years ago, I believe, when the teacher's contract came up, it was 7-2.
First of all, I have no doubt that this contract's going to pass. It's not going to arbitration, so I don't think anybody needs to go all up in arms and be worried about it. It's just not going to happen. And I feel like I do have a crystal ball on that. However, I'm really concerned about the back end of this contract at the 3.52. And I'm really concerned about how that's going to affect students. And I understand that you took this year into consideration as seeking out the lowest possible increase. I heard your whole explanation. I thought that made a lot of sense. However, what I'm really afraid of is that you didn't pay attention to what's coming down the pike. The town of Stratford almost had to lay off 40 teachers because of the state budget constraints and budget problems. Are we preparing, are our teachers prepared? Do they know, or are we prepared for a year 3 of a contract where we're putting in a 3.5% increase? We might not be able to meet that once we get our state reimbursement and our funding, and that we could be looking at furloughs or layoffs. I mean, was that ever a consideration? And again, I go back to Representative Bateson's point of smoothing. That frightens me, and I worry about the future and job security and that impact. I'm also really worried about how this is going to impact the classroom. We're at a particular juncture where we've cut school allocations by 20%. That directly affects students. Yet we're looking at salary increases at I thought it was 8.22 compounded, is that correct?
Compounded, it's 8.2.
Increase over 3 years. That's of big concern to me. And I'm just wondering if any of those issues were addressed or if anyone else is concerned about where we're going to be 3 years out from now and what that effect is going to literally have on the children of this district and what are those children going to go without in terms of programming. We just heard a budget discussion where we're actually reusing icing on cupcakes for the baking and pastry class. Are we even going to be able to offer a baking and pastry class 3 years out from now? Those are my concerns. And I just put that out there. I also just want to say that, you know, I heard the Board of Finance put you all on notice about budget reforms and reining things in. Is this in keeping with their wishes? I know you had an executive session. Do you think that this met their standard?
Yes.
You do. And then under the directives that the Board of Finance gave you, you believe this meets their standard?
Again, for members of the RTM that may not be familiar, state law requires that a member of the Board of Finance serve on the negotiating committee. We had a member who approved and agrees with this contract from the Board of Finance. And so I would say the discussion that we had with the Board of Finance, without getting into the details of it because it was held in executive session regarding negotiating strategy and it would not be appropriate to talk about the individual details. There were a broad range of opinions, but we believe that this contract meets the negotiating goals that were set forth with the advice of the Board of Finance that was adopted by the Board of Education. And so that's why we are recommending it to you. As to Ms. Iacona's comment about we're smoothing it out versus front-loading the savings and looking at the premium cost share for insurance, I will assure you that the Board of Education, again in executive session, talked about the various alternatives and felt that this was the best approach to take. And yes, a variety of ideas were expressed in that meeting, but this was still the prevailing view.
I noticed, I mean, you noticed your executive session that the Board of Selectmen was invited to participate in that feedback. Did they do so?
Yes. The Board of Selectmen, by town charter, are members of the Board of Finance, ex officio, and so...
Did they attend that meeting?
I think 2 out of the 3 did. I'm not sure that the third one did. Yes.
2 out of 3 of the members of the Board of Selectmen attended the meeting to help give you guidance.
I believe so, by my memory, yes.
Thank you.
Pam, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Representative Jacobs?
Matthew Jacobs, District 3. Just one quick clarification and then one other question. If the contract, just say you had rolled forward the old contract the full 3 years, the give up in step was a savings for the town of $1.6 million. The increase in general wages is about a $2.5 million. So the net change was less than $1 million over the course of the 3 years. Is that a fair way to think about it?
The net increased cost to the district, yes.
Okay, so we're talking about less than $1 million over the course of 3 years, not counting any other retirements or anything else. And my second point more is that if you were to have taken the 7.99 number we've been looking at and smooth that, that's actually a greater overall compounded increase than the way they did it. Thank you.
Maybe it shouldn't have been that.
Further comments, Representative Gale?
I know you said this, but I didn't see it in the memo, and the wording, I mean, the thing that is most concerning to, I'm sure everyone, is the fear that the pensions are in fact going to be pushed on the town. And you mentioned that as part of your negotiation that there was, the agreement that there would be a renegotiation, a reopening. So that is in the wording of the contract. Okay.
It is.
Okay, thank you very much.
Representative Lefkowitz?
Just a quick comment, because I know it's late, but in all of this, we were earlier in the evening saying thank you, and I just wanted to say I've had kids in the school system for 14 years, one of whom relies on the education provided by special ed. I'm crazy about all my kids' teachers, so I just want to say thank you.
Further questions or comments from the members of the body? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And if members have follow-up questions, please send them to me and I'll pass them on to the Board of Ed. Next, we have an item, Tax Relief Committee establishment. This is, the RTM needs to vote to form a senior tax relief committee if it so chooses. Representative Vergara is going to present this.
Hi, Jill Vergara, District 7. For the new members, I'm not sure that if you're aware that we have a senior and disabled tax relief program. It's under Chapter 95 of the town code, and it's 95-7. We adopted this relief program. The first relief program we had was in 1982. It was comprehensively changed in 2012. I wasn't a part of that process, but I believe this committee of the RTM changed the ordinance because there was declining participation in the program, and they wanted to make sure that they increased participation. They created relief through a freeze, a credit program, and a deferral program. Many seniors in the town are happy with the program. Being on the committee, I was appointed to the committee in 2016. I think the first meeting that we had was in July 2016. If you attend the meetings, you meet seniors who aren't happy with this program. If you see if you go through the reports from the tax assessors, you also note all of the declining participation rates from 2010 on. So when I started, I was given a report from the committee, the RTM committee, from 2014, and they had rates from 2010. The participation was 1,656 people. In 2011, it was 1,620 people. In 2012, it was 1,578 people. In 2013, it was 1,611 people. So in 2012, that's when they changed the program. It begins to increase by 1, and then it starts to decrease in 2015. In 2014, it was 1,612. In 2015, 1,542. And this is where it really starts to fall. It's constant. It's in 2013, 1,578. In 2015, 1,612, 1,542 in 2016, 1,476 in 2017, and finally, last year, the final participation rate was 1,438. So I think that it's been clearly shown that we're getting declining enrollments, and we need to do something about it. I think a lot of us ran on platforms that wanted to help seniors, and I think this is a perfect way to do it. And I'm really excited for this opportunity. And
thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the body? Representative Smay?
Having been the chairperson of this committee twice and a vice chair once, the decline is because of people moving or dying or being institutionalized. And you have to meet a criteria of income level that would qualify you to even be part of the program. But the biggest thing is that nobody wants to really participate in that freeze program.
Right, there's absolutely no participation
Yeah,
in
they
the
don't
freeze
want it.
program.
Well, because what happens is, essentially, it's like almost a reverse mortgage. When you pass away or go out of your home, then you're going to have payment of that plus a certain amount of interest, which would not be the 18% that we pay. What is it? Do you know the percentage? It's 5%, 8%, something like that. But still, you'd be paying an interest rate on that money
Yeah.
that you didn't pay. So that doesn't, it makes it very unattractive to have that form. And that's something we encountered each time we reviewed this.
We have a new tax assessor who seems fantastic, and he's submitted some proposals, and I think that they're great. A lot of them have no cost impact. It would help administration, and it would also help transparency with applying for the program. And I think that we should try to institute those changes as soon as possible. But he did point out that maybe since nobody's participating in the freeze program, we should maybe eliminate it. It would help him administratively as well.
Right.
Further questions from members of the body? Representative Hurley?
Thank you, Representative Vergara, for your interest and commitment to senior tax relief. As someone who has been on the body for a number of terms and participated in some SLMC meetings related to senior tax relief last term, one of the things we spoke about was having the tax assessor potentially take a more active role in developing the program under the guidance of the RTM. And I appreciate, again, Representative Vergara, speaking to this item tonight. But since the Senior Tax Relief Committee has not been established, and given the fact that we had these meetings and we were pretty much in agreement that the tax assessor's office would be involved, I'm just trying to understand how come nobody from the tax assessor's office is here tonight to talk about this.
I think we should form the committee first, and we're definitely going to be including the assessor in the process. But we're the body representing the people, and I think that we have the best voice for the people. They can directly reach us, their constituents, and we'll be able to be responsive to them in crafting an ordinance that they want, and that will hopefully ultimately help people stay in town. Because that's what we want. It will help all of us if we keep our seniors.
Further questions or comments? Representative Durrell?
Alex Durrell, RTM 3. There's an article about this last December 14th, only mentioning Democrats, and I actually got a call from a senior, a friend of my family's, and she said, Alex, I know your family, I know your mother, having started Operation Hope, and I thought it'd be wonderful, but why weren't there any Republicans on it? And I said I didn't know.
I don't know what article.
There was an article, I think, December 14th on the Connecticut Post website. Okay.
About the Fairfield ordinance?
Alex, I think you're talking about the other ordinance.
Oh.
And we do have Republican co-sponsors.
Okay.
Yeah.
At that time, it only mentioned Democrats.
The article did only mention Democrats, you're correct.
Right.
It's a different ordinance.
All right.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I just wanted to tell members of the body that SLMC will meet to populate the committee on the night of the 29th, just to let everyone know that. So if you have an interest in the committee, you should speak with your respective caucus chairs. At this point, we're going to adjourn the joint presentations, and we're going to break them into our small committees. So find your chair.